which I guess is now the perfect segue to wrap up this episode. um, we've been planning emancipation for quite a while to do this episode. So originally we were going to record it, I think, like couple of weeks ago. Um,
Yeah.
but it's ironic that the timing of the recording of this episode has kind of come along with a lot of interesting developments with the estate, to which I guess this particular segment was saying it's ironic that we're talking about emancipation at a time where I think physically, once again, Prince is no longer free. And
Yes.
yes, and that's starting with the announcement of the Broadway show for or Broadway adaptation of Purple Rain and the controversy along with that. Um, and just recently, the sort of civil war that's going on with the estate. Certain family members want to remove Londell McMillan and Charles Spicer from their sort of positions of power. And, all of this at a time when we're supposed to be celebrating the 40th anniversary of Purple Rain. Granted, we don't have an official announcement of a box set, but let's just say that that would be inevitable. We know that there's a commemorative book by Andrea Swinson that's due to be released sometime in May. Um, Hopefully, we're going to get a 4K, remaster of the Purple Rain film. But all of that now is kind of in jeopardy, or maybe not. Maybe that will be, because we've seen the estate go through transition before, and we still now have, the box sets of what 1999, Sign of the Times, Diamonds and Pearls, Welcome to America. So, but I think all of this is kind of got a lot of us wondering, what's going to happen, or even if Purple Rain, we get those things coming out, how is that going to affect, our enjoyment of it?
And then let's not forget either, perhaps, arguably the most important domino to fall in all of this is probably the Netflix documentary, because that is what's rumored to be holding up, you know, releases of, from all corners of the estate is Netflix's exclusivity agreement with regards to vault material and their right to first refusal and all that. So,
Mhm.
the from what I understand, from what I've heard, the Netflix documentary was supposed to be released last summer, but the speculation on the way of thinking was they delayed it to the summer of 2024 to sort of ride the coattails of, or the momentum of, the 40th anniversary of Purple Rain, because of course that's what Prince is most known for, in terms of the mass audience is Purple
Right.
Rain. So sort of attaching the release of the documentary to the anniversary of Purple Rain is sort of the smartest business strategy in terms of getting the widest exposure and the biggest buzz possible going for the documentary. But like Richard said, with all this, with the Civil War going on, everything's up in the air to the point where, are they going to be able to stop infighting long enough to allow these things to get released and publicly celebrated and into the public eye and into the public consciousness? Um, that's the $77 question um, at the moment. So who's to say? But I want to give a shout out to Mr. Christopher. If you guys don't know of, I'm sure all you guys know of Funkatopia. It's one of the most popular outlets for Prince information and discussion. And Mr. Christopher, um, a couple of nights ago, did a live stream about the whole situation surrounding not only the announcement of the Broadway adaptation of Purple Rain, but a large segment of the over 2 hour live stream was concerning the fight between, um, the various factions of the Prince estate as it exists now in the current configuration. So if you have not checked that out yet, I would highly recommend viewing that, especially the section where he breaks down the court document detailing the specifics of the case. Of course, as I was telling Richard before we started recording, um, quite a few of the more um, intimate details are redacted for legal purposes and confidentiality and all that, but
Mm.
the majority of the document detailing the court case and the issues at hand is quite eye-opening and quite revealing and quite concerning in my opinion, and it doesn't bode well for the immediate future of Prince releases in any sort of medium as of right now. But as I say, and as Richard has said, it's all sort of up in the air right now as to what's going on, and it's as I said on Twitter, it's a case of the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? So for years, we were left in limbo with regards to this transition of the estate, and then slowly things started trickling out, like the celebration and the two unreleased tracks, all share together now, and the the remix of Seven that came out during celebration, and then we had the big release of Diamonds and Pearls Super Deluxe, which was fully um, orchestrated and executed by Londell. As far as my understanding goes, Mr. Christopher says as much in his live stream that Londell was the major force behind getting that out. So we had those releases, and there seemed to be some positive momentum going forward, and some realignment as far as getting on the right track to, again, a regular stream of releases, much in the same vein of, like Richard was saying, in the Comerica period, we had these steady stream of releases of super deluxe editions with 1999 and Sign of the Times, and we seem to be getting back to those days. But now we know that behind the scenes, you know, a power war was sort of brewing and gearing up, and so everything's up in the air once again, and it's sort of a case of history repeating itself, where we really don't know where things are headed and how things are going to resolve, but we could just hope for the best. And it's really um, disconcerting and upsetting right now, because we're in the year 2024, which is a landmark anniversary of Prince's most well-known um, intellectual property. And if there's any project which is really important to really be on the ball as far as promotion and all that, it's Purple Rain. So um, for the estate to have hit such a serious snag is really disconcerting and really disheartening for me. But I know a lot of people are just, and myself as well, we're just hanging in there, and it's sort of wait and see, how things are going to resolve. But we're hoping it doesn't get too ugly. Hopefully Sharon or Wandell don't, tattoo slave on their face or anything like that. But but we'll see how things go. It's just really uncertain right now, and kind of an uneasy feeling in general.
Yeah. Um, you know, I'm a fan of a lot of different artists. And maybe there's a few that where, I have just as much of their material as Prince, both living and dead.
Right.
Um, but when it comes to the different estates, now maybe I'm not as entrenched, meaning like I don't belong to a lot of the groups or don't communicate with the fan base the way that I do with the Prince fan base. Um, but there are like a couple of shows that I watch, that follow other artists. And, there are things that I think overall better than us that they unanimously agree on a thing to where, and especially when it comes to an artist that has a long career like Prince's, where it's like, no, they embrace the artist as a whole. They may have their favorite album or they may have their favorite era, but they don't, put down other people in the fan base because they like that particular album or they like that particular era.
Right.
Um, but with that being said, like I said, I don't really follow the others as entrenched, but that's kind of the impression that I get. Um, but some of those estates have had situations where family members did not agree, where it did affect the release of whether it's a reissue of an album or a box set or a documentary. But eventually they do come together. And even if they probably still don't speak, the thing about it is it's really not what you deserve. It's about what you can negotiate.
Right.
And the thing is that there's still those millions of dollars that's on the table. And it comes to a point to where, yeah, as long as they're not agreeing on a thing, there's no money coming in because it's like, oh, well, we're fighting, so that's going to block that release of this box set, or it's going to block this documentary.
Right. It's a stalemate.
Yeah. And, that's one of the unfortunate things that can come about. Like we're seeing with the Netflix documentary, you're saying that it was due to come out last year. Um, then it's more logical for it to come out this year. I thought I heard something that said that we probably even won't see it till 2025. Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it at this point.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and like I said, number one, it would probably take a much longer episode to kind of dive into who all the major players are.
Yeah.
Like I said, probably check out Funktopia's podcast for the major details.
Yep.
Um, like I said, it'd probably take a longer episode to say, okay, well, okay, Londell did work with Prince, but then, with originally it was Londell and then Charles Koppelman, who ironically was head of EMI at the time that Emancipation was distributed.
Yep.
Um, which when they were kind of named as sort of major players in regards to the estate, it really brought me to the point of, reminded me of Michael Jackson's estate, where in his will, it's like there's John Bronca that's named, and then there's John McClane, two people that Michael Jackson hadn't worked with for a number of years. All of a sudden, they're in position to run the estate.
Yeah.
Now, you want to put the conspiracy theory hat on. And it's
Exactly.
like, okay, why is it that these people that these artists haven't worked with for decades? I can get it if, you know, well, in the case of Prince, who didn't have a will, but with Michael Jackson, whoever he was working with currently, wouldn't they have been in a better position, or wouldn't they have been named? Or was it something that Michael just didn't think about in those years, or was it something he was going to get around to changing, and that was the will that exists, or considered the current will? Um,
Right.
but with Prince, you got a different scenario where you don't have a will, but then you have certain family members that kind of put these people in that position. And
Right.
unfortunately, depending on who you talk to or some of the chat that goes on throughout certain circles, you know, were these individuals, well, of course, Charles Koppelman is no longer alive. So hence, here's where Charles Spencer comes in, where Charles Spicer comes in. And I don't know, it's a thing of, they're saying, oh, well, Sharon and whoever else, they were going to come up with these lofty ideas. But I don't know, I don't know. But then they were going to, they were interested in selling their shares to Primary Wave. And I'm thinking that if they had lofty ideas, they would want full and total control of things and not just sell it. Or maybe they kind of see where Primary Wave is a more, I don't know how to put it, maybe a more open and impartial
Right.
decision maker.
More experience than they are in matters of, music management and all that.
Right. Now I know there was an interview they did with NPR, Primary Wave, where when the question was asked about Prince, um, they said that they don't get into the record manufacturing decisions. So they don't decide on what box set comes out. They don't really get into that. Their expertise is really just dealing with the publishing and intellectual property.
Yep.
So, something like the Broadway show, then they would agree to, okay, yeah, go ahead and use the songs for something like that. Or if they want to put a song in a commercial, or they want to say, like a film like Yesterday that used all those Beatles songs. So if somebody wanted to do an original film and use all Prince music for that film, kind of a la Girl Six, that's where Primary Wave. Looks like. Yep, there you are. So I don't know. It's so much to unpack with that one.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said, the timing. couldn't come at a worse time, because not only that, you have the Broadway production that, we've only read just it's just a synopsis. Like we were talking about earlier in the show, you said it's just it's just kind of like his idea for the film. I mean, not the film, but the Broadway production,
Yes.
um, which, that could change, or we have no confirmation that something was approved or not approved by the estate in regards to that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I know you're more open minded to the Broadway production than I am with it. Not
Yeah.
because it's Broadway. Um, like I said, theater has been around since ancient times, um, you know, thousands of years before film, you
Right.
know, thousands of years before television as a storytelling medium. Um, I know people that do theater, and it's a respected craft. A lot of our favorite actors and actresses, they wouldn't have the careers that they had if it wasn't for live theater or even Broadway.
Right.
So that's not my issue with the Purple Rain being on Broadway. um, some of it is based on the synopsis. Kind of living in this world now where you know my childhood is getting wrecked. Because it's like, yeah, it was the 80s. It was a different time period. Our mentality was in a different way. How society influences things was much different, and that's not lost on us today. Like, yeah, that was the 80s. We don't do that anymore, or hopefully a lot of us have grown up to the point to where, like, we don't do those things anymore. We don't say those things anymore, you know. Um,
Yeah, but to that fact, even though we don't do them anymore, it's important to recognize how and why we once did, so
exactly.
that we can learn from the past
Yes.
and grow from the past, instead of applying modern sensibilities to the past and sort of erasing it or sweeping it under the carpet
Exactly.
and sanitizing things to the point where um, it reshapes entire narratives and entire stories. As Jill Jones said in her Facebook post, which is right on the money. Shout out to Jill, we love you. Um, you know, um, People that weren't there and didn't live through it really have no right to alter or reshape reality to fit their own moral abilities. I mean, the past is past. It was what it was. Let's not deny it. Let's instead keep it intact, for the very reason that we can analyze it and we can learn from it and we can grow from it. Because if we deny it, then we can't learn or we can't grow from what came before us.
Exactly. In other words, those that try to forget the past are doomed to repeat it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And for those out there that are just kind of like, oh well, it's Purple Rain. It's a work of fiction, and it's an adaptation of a film. And I get that argument, but there's I think you were telling me about the person that said something about how, like, yeah, it's an adaptation. We still have the original. To a point, I agree with that. Yeah, like Scarface. You know, for people that only know the Al Pacino version, there was a version way back in the 1930s. You know, um, God knows how many times A Star is Born has been remade. Imitation of Life. There's different versions of that as well.
Right.
And remakes are fine. I don't have a problem with a remake of something. Um, if it's good or if it's great, perfect. If it flops or if it's terrible, then cool. Yeah, we do have the original. The only problem with Purple Rain is that it's number one, semi autobiographical, meaning that every single moment in that film wasn't exactly who Prince was or even how he lived his life. Some things were sensationalized to tell a good story, and that's true. But the fact that you have Prince, whose, you know, maybe image isn't so wrapped up in the Purple Rain, but in regards to the mainstream, separating who that person was from Purple Rain is a lot trickier than doing a remake of, say, Star Trek, or doing a remake of Batman, or remaking A Star Is Born. It's a little bit trickier because
Yeah.
the things that they want to change about this production are, do threaten to kind of whitewash Prince in a way that, say, banning books from libraries and schools does to erase an entire narrative of all types of groups of people, even the ones attempting to do the rewriting of history themselves. They're doing also a disservice to them, um, because, again, if you don't have those things done as a measuring stick, then how will we learn? How will we grow? How will we know, okay, well, yeah, that was that time period and it was acceptable then. Okay, we've grown a little bit as a society in that area. How do we know not to do those things again? Because it's not as simple as up, don't do that. um, you need those reminders, the horrors of everything, the horrors of World War II, the horrors of slavery, the horrors of any terrible period in history going back to the dawn of mankind. How would you know? That's kind of like, on a Christian level. Oh, let's take this out of the Bible because it has, famine and disease, or it has this in it, or, you know, virtually every female in there is a whore or a reformed whore in that book, minus maybe two or three women. Let's take all of those out of there because it has those elements. So that's the problem. Where does it stop when you
Yeah,
do
it's
that?
like
And
it's like sanitizing sanitizing Schindler's List, which deals with the
exactly,
Holocaust, or sanitizing 12 Years a Slave. You can't do that because it's important to acknowledge history and face history. And yes, it was ugly, but the point is not to deny that ugliness. The point is to learn from it so we can rise above it.
exactly.
And
And
if it's denied, we can't. What way is there to learn to rise above something that isn't acknowledged? I don't know if I'm making any sense, but
oh yeah, exactly.
so
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I
it's just yeah, I agree. This whole sort of sanitization and reinterpretation of history is, to me, it's a disturbing trend. And like you say, at what point does it stop? At what point do things stop being revised ad nauseum to the point where they lose their true meaning and true impact and true potential as a teachable, thing and a learning moment, you know, for society.
Yeah. It's, I don't know, maybe it's apples and oranges. But you see a lot of films, that still have certain themes in them that may be shocking to other people, but no one's saying, "Oh, we got to ban that. Oh, we got to sanitize that. Oh, no, we have to change that." So, I mean, I get it depending on what the IP is and the type of demographic you're trying to get, but I don't know. I mean, for those that are more familiar with Broadway, and I guess one of the things that I kind of have an issue with Broadway with now, just like with certain films, is that there's no original content or very little original content. Now you have, I know one of the things that I keep seeing the commercials for here. There's a production of Mrs. Doubtfire that I guess was a big hit on Broadway at one point, so now it's on tour, I guess. But just
Wow.
yeah, but just using that as an example, it's like, okay, the film Mrs. Doubtfire, okay, was an enjoyable film. Robin Williams made that his own, and that's no slight to the actor that's portraying that role on stage, because my feeling is that your job as the actor or actress is to service the character and not have the character service you. Um, but like I said,
But again, that's where we get into the murky area with Purple Rain because there's that area of ambiguity in terms of autobiography meets fiction and
right,
portraying portraying Prince, you know, for years, ever since, and especially ever since Prince's passing, people in the fan community by and large have said nobody can nobody can be, fill Prince's shoes but Prince. So if you're arguing that it's a fictional character, fine, but like you said, the gray area in between fiction and autobiography makes it tricky because how much are you willing to sort of suspend disbelief that what matters more is the character of the kid than the reality of Prince. So it'll be interesting to see how they pull that off with regards to the Broadway adaptation.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, what we just have is just that synopsis, and it is it's shocking. When I first read it, I'm like, what the, everybody's reaction, like, what the hell is this? Why? Why? But
Yeah,
more to your point, yeah, I mean, an example like Mrs. Doubtfire is different, because it's like, okay, well, we know Robin Williams in that, in real life isn't Mrs. Doubtfire. It's
right,
right. It's no, just like okay, at first everybody felt that nobody could play the genie in Aladdin other than Robin Williams, but Will Smith did put a different spin on it, and to me was just as charismatic as Robin
yes,
Williams. But again, Will Smith and Robin Williams, they're not the genie in real life. Um,
right,
you have Prince that is, and I don't know, maybe by the time that starts its Broadway run, then maybe we'll have the Netflix documentary. Um, we have your podcast, we have my show, we have Michael Dean's show. We've got so many other shows um, that keep things in a balanced perspective. Um, but like I said, on a larger scale, maybe that Netflix documentary can do that, or maybe those that aren't familiar with Prince that go in and see that for the first time, maybe they'll go and seek out the real person and find out who the real person was. And hopefully
right,
going with the understanding that, okay, yeah, we did this Broadway thing. It's different from what the film is. It's different than who Prince was as a person. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, I gotta thank you for this in this conversation, because as we're talking, I'm kind of like the kind of negative feelings I've had for it are kind of put more into perspective than when we started the show. Because at first it was just like, now it's like, yeah, I'm still not really looking forward to it. Um, yeah, I'm still concerned about the narrative in regards to it. But I'm hoping on a positive level that this is just another thing that's out there that will get people interested in Prince and keep his name out there, but keep it in a positive light. And despite the things that we got a problem with, like I said, hopefully it'll lead new people to go seek out the records or go learn about the person, go find some interviews, go find some footage, YouTube footage of TV interviews, and buy a lot of the books that are out and take a deeper dive.
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah.
But
That's what I'm hoping too, and I'm I'm of the same mindset. I'm sort of on the fence and nervous of the alterations and the changes, which as we've said, are quite significant to the idea of character development and just the sanitation of certain realities. But at the same time, yeah, I'm hopeful that, yeah, like you say, Richard, the exposure of Prince to a new audience that guys have him on their radar is an important thing, and I think I think it's important to be realistic and recognize that some things we're not going to be happy with, but if we can learn to live with them, that's the best we can do. And at least on a positive note, like you say, it's getting the exposure up to a new audience, and that's always a good thing, um, in my opinion. So
yeah, gotta still be seekers of truth.
yes,
You said, if even if this, it is as it is on the surface, this attempt to change the narrative or change who he is or change the perception of who Prince is. Um, and then that mixed into, like I said, with all the infighting with the estate. Um, you know, what's the agenda of those that want to hold on to power versus, someone's own flesh and blood. And like I said, we all have family. Um, I would say probably the most important thing to do is, even if you have absolutely nothing, have some kind of piece of paper in place that, whether there's family that you embrace or even family that you may not even speak to or whatever, make sure you got something that says what you have, if you have a lot or little or nothing, that it's going to who you want it to go to.
and that is a large part of the reason why. And I should say that to preface this, that I'm not a big David Bowie fan. I've never dived into his catalog um, in great depth, but I do know and I have heard that he had things meticulously planned out in the event of his passing, and that's largely why his estate is so well managed and well run and well regarded now is because he had the machinations and the apparatuses in place for it to run smoothly and without these hiccups and the drama and the infighting.
Mhm.
So it's really important, as Richard says, to have your ducks in a row, even if you feel you have nothing to leave behind. It's important to have all that ironed out because otherwise, all you have is chaos and infighting and
Mhm.
chaos and disorder
Disorder.
ruling my world today. There
Yeah,
you go.
and it's so many variables to cover on that as well. But I'll say to kind of clear up as well, where David Bowie, I don't know, to me he always seemed very meticulous in his business. I think starting with the '90s and those
Yep.
Pullman bonds. So I think as a business person, he was always savvy. So I don't know if he had always had things in place like that, but also because he was dealing with a very serious life threatening disease, to which after so many treatments or whatever, and realizing maybe those days are fewer ahead,
Right. So there
to
there's more
to
there
begin the process of planning, where Prince, to me, Prince didn't set out to die.
right.
It was, but
There was no forewarning or foresight that this was going to happen, whereas with cancer you kind of have that foreknowledge of, okay, this is going to happen. It's inevitable, but then again, death itself is coming for all of us. So,
right, which and especially we're in this 2024, and it seems like just these first few weeks, there's been a lot going on the outside. But I think usually with situations like this, not just with my own personal studies and personal spiritual beliefs, but one thing that Prince has said, when he was promoting the Raven to the Joy Fantastic album, uh, and closer to that Raven to the Year 2000 live show, when he was doing all the press for that, um, I think one of the biggest takeaways was that Today Show interview where he talks about entropy, and
mhm.
the thing about you know just be into, I guess, to put it in layman's terms, let's all strive to be into ourselves. The more we love ourselves, definitely, we'll attract positive people to us. A lot of times it's easier said than done, but and a lot of times it really takes more than just saying it. You got to put in some work as well. But when you got people just reacting to headlines, reacting to social media, or reacting to the outside world and not having that information, information is free. Um, you know, like I said, ask questions, study, get into yourself, learn yourself, love yourself. And that way, while everybody else is kind of running around, like I said, blindly reacting to things, blindly getting angry about things, um, not knowing what to do, then you know what to do to, you know, at least be some kind of an asset to the people around you, because that's really all it is at the end, just us, and the people around us that we love and care about. Um, and figuring out how to live the best life. So when all whatever this is going on, if it accidentally triggers the end, then it'll be with no regrets, or depending on what level that is, at least you figured out how to live your best life while, and hopefully you can help others do that too. But while the majority is running around acting crazy and acting a fool, you kicking back, enjoying life. But that's my soapbox for the day.
Yeah, I mean, and to sum it up in one concise thought, which is something that I have learned over the past 3 years or so, is, I used to be a very reactionary person, but now I've learned throughout the course of going within myself and analyzing my thoughts and my ability to manifest and really more fully enjoy life, is it's better to be observant than to be reactionary.
Yes. Yep. Definitely.
On. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and get notification on future episodes on the Amari Communications channel, or become a Patreon supporter and get early access to content as well as bonus content exclusive to the channel. Peace.